The chair was cold. That quiet kind of cold that didn't demand your attention until it crawled up your back, whispering, "You don't belong here." The room was made of glass walls, doors, even the table legs reflected the fluorescent light in sharp angles. It was too bright, too clean, too polished. It was the kind of space that made you feel messy just by breathing in it. I sat there, spine straight, hands folded neatly in my lap, rehearsing my opening pitch in my mind for the 73rd time. Literally, this was my 73rd interview in 8 months. Across from me sat Philomena Oswald, Chief Talent Officer of TGR Advisory, impeccably dressed, thin-rimmed glasses, eyebrows drawn like twin swords, ready to slice through any sense of confidence I had left. And she wasn't subtle. Her gaze sliced through my resume like a scalpel, slow, methodical, and deliberately cold. "Your resume seems embellished," she finally said, dragging the word like a surgeon pulling gauze from a wound. Not a question, a statement, one delivered with the soft elegance of a guillotine. My heart thudded, but my face stayed still. Because this wasn't the first time. This was just the most obvious time. There was no attempt to hide the skepticism in her voice, no pretense of objectivity, just pure, distilled doubt wrapped in corporate language and iced coffee courtesy. I looked at the woman in front of me and thought, "You already decided I'm not enough. This interview is just a formality to confirm your bias." But I smiled, gently, professionally, like a woman trained her entire life to be composed in rooms that hoped she'd fall apart. I answered her calmly, and she wasn't listening. Because to her, I was 42, female, and not from any of the right firms. And in her world, that meant one thing: she's a risk. What Philomena didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the risk was hers, and she was about to lose everything. I was 42 years old, but in that room, I might as well have been invisible. 15 years of strategy, expansion, turnaround projects, international markets shrunk down to 1 page of paper, and even that was too much for her to believe. "Your resume seems embellished," Philomena said, her voice soaked in disbelief, her eyes sharp with suspicion. She didn't lean forward when she said it. She didn't blink either. Because in her world, women like me weren't supposed to have results like mine. Not without a famous firm behind us, not without a man introducing us. I wanted to respond with data. I wanted to say, here's the growth chart, here are the numbers, here are the emails from the CEOs. But I knew from her tone that none of it would matter. Because this wasn't about the resume, it was about me. I was too calm, too self-possessed, too sure of what I'd built. And that was what she didn't trust. In her eyes, confidence without permission looked like arrogance. Success without pedigree looked like fabrication. To her, I wasn't experienced. I was suspicious. I wasn't accomplished. I was difficult to verify. And worst of all, I wasn't young. That, more than anything, made me a threat she couldn't define and therefore couldn't tolerate. Then came the smile. The one that wasn't a smile at all, just a polite curve of the lips designed to cut, not comfort. "Without a big firm backing you, these results seem hard to verify," she said lightly, as if she were commenting on the weather. But make no mistake, it was a dagger disguised as civility. I blinked once. Not because I didn't hear her, but because I needed 1 second to stop my hands from shaking. It wasn't the first time someone questioned my value, but it was the first time they made it sound like they were doing me a favor by pretending they were open-minded. She flipped a page of my resume with 2 fingers, deliberate, dismissive, like she was turning over a napkin, not 10 years of leadership. "Anyone can write numbers on paper," she added with a laugh so quiet it was almost a whisper, but loud enough to sting. I wanted to speak, but I knew the game, and the rules were clear. If I defend myself, I'm defensive. If I stay silent, I'm complicit. If I smile, I'm fake. If I frown, I'm angry. So I chose the only response that still allowed me to breathe. I sat still, and I watched her dig her own grave with every smug word she thought was clever. What she didn't realize was, the person she just insulted had helped save a multi-million-dollar product line, and in exactly 2 minutes, she was about to find out. And then, just as she was about to move on to the next page of my resume, like it meant nothing, the side door creaked open. Footsteps, polished leather, sharp, decisive, a presence that pulled the air from the room. We both turned, and there he stood, Elias Bowen, CDO of one of the fastest-growing consumer goods companies in North America. Tailored suit, intent gaze, a name that made investors stand straighter and analysts stop talking mid-sentence. He froze mid-stride. His eyes locked on me. And then, the impossible happened. "It's you!" His voice was warm, surprised, almost reverent. "You're the miracle worker who saved our product line last year when every other consultant told us it was doomed." Philomena blinked, twice. Her fingers froze mid-turn. And then, Elias turned to her without even asking who she was. "If she's joining your team, we're tripling our investment. If not, I'm pulling the contract." The room went still. You could hear the hum of the light fixture. You could hear Philomena's ego crumble beneath her perfect posture. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. Because in that moment, every doubt she had tried to pin on me evaporated in the shadow of someone who actually knew what I was capable of. Philomena's expression didn't crumble all at once. It cracked slowly, like a porcelain mask meeting its first real earthquake. The confident tilt of her chin wavered. Her lips parted just slightly, not enough to speak, just enough to reveal the shock she couldn't hide. Her hand hovered above my resume, no longer sure whether to turn the page or close the folder and crawl under the table. I remained still, not out of fear, not out of triumph, but because I knew some victories don't need sound. They just need a pause and the right witness. So I looked at her, direct, calm, unapologetic. And she looked back into the eyes of a woman she had tried to shrink. But there was no shrinking here, not anymore, because in that silence between us, something shifted. The power no longer sat on her side of the table, and she knew it. It didn't take long. Barely 20 minutes after Elias left the room, Philomena returned with the urgency of someone chasing a train she never thought would leave the station. Her tone had changed, her posture softened. Even her smile, the one that had once cut like a knife, now curved like an apology. "We'd like to fast-track your application," she said, glancing at her tablet. "Actually, given your qualifications, we're considering you for a senior director role." Oh, now I was qualified. "The compensation would of course reflect the seniority," she added quickly. "And we're prepared to offer well above our original range. Double, in fact. Double." Funny. Less than an hour ago, I was a questionable candidate. Now I was a corporate unicorn. I nodded politely. But inside, I felt something else. Not triumph, not validation, but a quiet, deep knowing. They didn't value me. They feared losing me. And that is not the same thing. They smiled now, nodded, praised, promised, but I still remembered. I remembered the way Philomena's eyes scanned me like I didn't belong in the building. The way she didn't even bother to ask about my experience, just jumped straight to questioning it. I remembered her tone, dry, clinical, suspicious, as if every line on my resume was part of a performance I had no right to claim. And now I was impressive. Now I was strategic. Now I was senior director material. But it wasn't real, not really. It wasn't me they saw. It was Elias's reaction to me. That kind of praise, it's borrowed. conditional, fragile, fickle. And I had learned the hard way that anything you don't earn in their eyes, they'll take from you the second they can. So yes, they were offering more, but I saw it for what it really was, desperation wearing a silk tie. And that wasn't enough. That night, I sat at my kitchen counter, the offer letter open in front of me, like some kind of golden ticket dipped in poison. The numbers were generous. The title was prestigious. The benefits? Excellent. On paper, it was everything I had been hoping for. But in my chest, it felt wrong. I stared at the line that said Senior Director Global Strategy and wondered why the words felt so heavy. Not because of fear, but because of something worse. Compromise. Not compromise of money, but of memory. Because I couldn't forget how they looked at me before they knew who I was. How quickly they'd written me off. How easily I was dismissed until someone more powerful stepped in and gave me value. If I say yes now, what am I really accepting? Am I accepting the role? Or am I accepting their rules, their system, their right to determine my worth only when it suits them? Would taking this job be the victory or the surrender? Because it's not a win if they only respect you after someone richer told them to. It's not a win if your success depends on someone else's approval. I looked at the offer again, and I asked myself the only question that really mattered. Do I want to be chosen by people who couldn't see me until someone else pointed me out? And my gut already knew the answer. I was still staring at the offer letter when my phone buzzed. A single message from Nisha. Still on for coffee tomorrow morning? Got something to run by you. Simple, unassuming, but it hit me like a knock on a secret door I didn't know I was standing in front of. Nisha, my friend, my mirror. The one person who never needed Elias to believe in me because she already knew. We'd been meeting once a month for coffee since the fallout at Crest. Two women who had been pushed out not for failing, but for being inconveniently competent. Her message didn't say much, but it didn't have to. Because when someone who sees your worth without permission, without hesitation says, "I have something to talk about," you listen. And for the first time in weeks, I closed my laptop without feeling like I was leaving something behind. I didn't know it yet, but that message was the first brick in the foundation of something that would change everything. I didn't make the decision that night. Not really. It wasn't a list of pros and cons. It wasn't the salary. It wasn't the title. It wasn't even Philomena's face frozen in that moment Elias praised me. What made the decision was smaller, quieter, older than reason. It was a whisper inside my chest, one that had been there since I was a girl. The one that spoke up every time someone tried to shrink me because I didn't sound the way they expected or walk in the world the way they preferred. You don't need their blessing. You've always known who you are. That voice had been silenced too often. Softened for rooms that didn't want it loud, smoothed over for interviews that weren't ready for fire. But not this time. This time I listened. I didn't feel triumphant or defiant. I felt clear. And so I opened my email, typed a short, respectful decline, and clicked send. Not out of anger, not out of pride, but out of truth. Because real worth doesn't ask to be recognized. It just walks away from those too blind to see it. We weren't supposed to meet again. Not like this. Not after being laid off. Not after being told in different rooms by different men that we were no longer aligned with the company's evolving culture. Translation: too old, too opinionated, too unwilling to nod quietly when nonsense paraded as strategy. But there we were, 3 women, 3 minds that had carried departments, saved failing projects, and trained men who now had our jobs. And we sat at the same cafe we always did, this time not to vent, this time to build. It started with a question Nisha asked, one eyebrow raised, like she already knew the answer. Why do the big firms always get it wrong when it comes to human nuance? And Yara, ever the strategist, leaned in, because their models were built by the same 5 types of people for the same 5 types of markets. That's when it clicked. We didn't need permission. We didn't need branding. We didn't need to beg for a seat at their table anymore, because we were about to build our own Prism Strategies, a firm not designed to impress the old guard, but to prove them obsolete. We didn't have investors. We didn't have logos. We didn't even have business cards. But what we did have was fire. Each of us had walked out of boardrooms where we were told politely that our time was up, that we were no longer aligned with the vision, that our tone didn't fit the culture, that maybe it's time to explore new horizons. Translation: we were too smart to control, too sharp to contain, too female to lead, and so we cashed the checks they gave us to make us disappear, and we turned those very severance packages into startup capital. We didn't rent a high-rise downtown. We set up shop in Nisha's garage, right next to an old treadmill and 3 boxes of her husband's vinyl records. Our desks were folding tables. Our server was a dusty laptop on a recycled bookshelf. Our break room was a chipped coffee machine and 2 mugs that said, "World's okayest boss." But it was ours. It was real, and it pulsed with something no corporate tower could match: conviction. The email came at 10:47 p.m. Subject line: RE Possible Consultation, Southeast Asia. It was from a mid-level manager at a mid-sized consumer electronics company. Not flashy, not Fortune 500, but real and struggling. Our executive team wants to expand into Southeast Asia, but every firm we've talked to says it's too risky, too complicated, not the right timing. He ended the message with a line we'd never forget. "I remember a presentation you gave years ago. You made complexity sound human. Are you open to a second opinion?" We looked at each other across the folding tables in Nisha's garage, still in yoga pants and messy buns, and we knew this was it. Not a big break, not a headline, but a start, a real one, a chance to prove that we saw what others ignored. And so we said yes, not because the budget was great, it wasn't, but because we recognized the pattern. When every firm says too risky, that's where we look closer, because risk to them often just means not Western enough. The room was quiet, spreadsheets open, PowerPoints ready. Yara had crunched the numbers. Nisha had modeled 5 potential entry points, and then Aviva leaned back in her chair. Arms crossed, eyes steady. "We're looking at this all wrong," she said. Yara blinked. Nisha looked up from her laptop. "We're treating this market like it's a puzzle on a spreadsheet, but it's not. It's a living, breathing culture." Aviva clicked away the presentation and pulled up a photo. It was a grandmother in Ho Chi Minh City selling phone cases on a sidewalk stall. No brand, no store, just instinct, hustle, and adaptation. "She's the market," Aviva said, "not the GDP. Not the trade barriers. Her. The way she talks, negotiates, adapts. You want to enter this region? Understand her first." Yara nodded slowly. "We don't launch based on data." Aviva smiled. "We launch based on dignity." That became Prism's first philosophy. Not numbers, not trends, but humans. Monday, 9:02 a.m. The report went out. Subject line: Phase 1 Outcomes, Vietnam and Indonesia Markets. One by one, they opened it. Department heads, brand managers, regional VPs. And then, silence. No questions, no praise, no jokes. Just the kind of stillness that comes when everyone realizes this changes everything. Slide 1, plus 270% in local engagement. Customer drop-off reduced by 60%. First week sell-through doubled projections. Slide 2, offline micro-hubs suggested by local vendors outperformed flagship retail locations. Slide 3, quotes from local customers. Finally, something that speaks to us. Feels like it was made with us, not just for us. You listened. No fancy slogans, no massive ad budgets. Just Prism and the people they refused to ignore. By 9:17 a.m., Prism's inbox lit up. Can we schedule a call? Are you available to present to our Europe division? Would Prism consider a long-term retainer? And in that moment, Aviva didn't smile. She just closed her laptop, looked at Nisha and Yara, and said quietly, "They heard us." The conference brochure listed them last. Room D 4215 p.m. Panel Emerging Market Experiments. Not exactly prime time, not the main hall with LED walls and catered coffee. Just a folding table, 3 plastic chairs, and a projector with a slight flicker. Aviva, Nisha, and Yara arrived early. No makeup teams, no PR handlers, just 3 women who had built something no one thought would work. The moderator glanced at their name tags. "You're Prism? From that Vietnam thing." Aviva just smiled. "Yes, from that Vietnam thing." Room D4 didn't fill up. At first, a few curious analysts, a skeptical VP from a legacy brand, one young journalist, notebook ready, probably hoping for a quote to laugh at later. Then Aviva stood up. No slides, no graphics, just one sentence on screen. What if we stopped designing for markets and started designing with them? Silence. Then Nisha followed with the numbers. Yara pulled up real customer audio clips. By minute 12, phones were out, people were recording. By minute 20, the back row had people standing. By minute 30, the hallway outside was packed. They were given a side stage, but they stole the entire conference. The main hall was packed, over 600 executives, investors, and press. Prism had just wrapped up their session, a bigger room this time, but still labeled Alternative Growth. Aviva stood at the edge of the stage, gathering her notes, ready to step off. That's when he stood up. Front row, gray suit, recognized instantly, Elias Bowen, the CEO of one of the top 10 firms in the sector, the man who once interrupted a job interview to defend her, now standing up again, this time not in a closed room, this time with hundreds watching. Before the next speaker, Elias said, "I have something to say." The room went quiet. Last year, our international division was collapsing. Nothing worked. We hired consultants, we restructured. We cut costs. Still failed. He turned to the crowd, then back to Aviva. Then Prism came in. They didn't pitch. They listened. They watched people. They respected the market. He held up the latest quarterly report. That strategy, it didn't just save our margins. It reshaped our entire growth model. He paused. Let that sentence settle. I'm not endorsing a brand. I'm acknowledging a paradigm shift. And he sat down. The applause didn't come immediately. It took 3 full seconds. Then the room erupted. It didn't even take a full week. 3 days after Elias's standing ovation after the articles labeled Prism the new voice of global strategy, after inboxes flooded with partnership offers, TGR made their move. No press release, no bold headlines, just a silent update on their website. Introducing Horizon Markets' local-first growth strategies built for next-gen economies. TGR Strategic Division, the color palette, suspiciously familiar. The mission statement, almost word for word what Aviva once wrote on Prism's pitch deck. The case study, City Ho Chi Minh. Again, Nisha saw it first. "You have to be kidding me." Aviva didn't answer. She didn't need to. Because it wasn't just a copy, it was a theft disguised in PowerPoint slides and polished buzzwords. The company that once questioned her resume, now copying the very thing they called too soft, too unscalable. But the worst part, they thought Prism wouldn't fight back. The press kit for Horizon Markets was finally leaked, and there she was, Philomena Oswald. TGR's head of strategy now listed as lead architect of local market innovations, the same woman who once narrowed her eyes across a conference table and said, "Your achievements seem exaggerated." Now, smiling stiffly in front of a map she didn't draw, standing in front of ideas she once dismissed. giving interviews on rethinking localization with words she didn't write. Yara slammed her laptop shut. This is war. Nisha didn't speak, just stared at the screen at Philomena's face frozen mid-pose. Aviva didn't move either. She wasn't surprised. No, this wasn't shock. This was the moment she realized they don't just reject you. They steal your voice, then hire someone else to speak it. TGR rolled out sleek diagrams, glossy decks, slide after slide of market predictions and colorful charts. But they missed something fundamental, something money can't buy. They had data. Prism had stories. They had buzzwords. Prism had wounds, scars that knew where old systems failed because they'd bled under them. They had Philomena. Prism had women who'd once been told to shrink, soften, wait their turn. And then came the quiet storm. 6 countries, 6 markets, 6 tailored strategies all rolled out by Prism within 1 month. No billboard campaigns, no overpriced PR, just results. And a simple line printed at the top of every report. Built not in boardrooms, but in lived reality. TGR tried to respond, but their numbers didn't move. Because truth moves differently. It roots itself. And when it blooms, it doesn't ask for permission. The meeting wasn't in a boardroom. It wasn't in an office. It was at a private lounge, discreet, quiet, strategic. Aviva arrived 5 minutes early, not because she was eager, because she wanted him to see her waiting. He walked in without a handshake, sat down, loosened his tie, and cut to the chase. We'd like to acquire Prism. Just like that. No apology, no mention of Horizon Markets, no acknowledgement that they tried and failed to replicate her work. Aviva tilted her head. Interesting. You didn't seem interested when I applied for a job. He cleared his throat, smiled thinly. That was a different time, different people. She raised an eyebrow. No, same people, same time, just a different outcome. He looked down at his coffee. It had gone cold, and for the first time, so had his power. Aviva didn't flinch. She didn't reject. She reached into her leather briefcase and placed a thin folder on the table. It had 3 pages, each typed, each bolded, each final. She slid it toward the CEO. 3 terms, non-negotiable. He raised an eyebrow. Go ahead. She tapped the first page. 1. Prism retains full autonomy. No rebranding, no restructuring, no board oversight. Every decision, ours. He nodded slowly. She flipped to the second. 2. A new division, talent evaluation, will be created under Prism's model. It will replace outdated recruitment filters and be led by people trained in bias interruption. Hiring won't be based on where you worked, but how you think. The CEO's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. Then came the third page. 3. Philomena Oswald will have no access control or involvement in the new division. Not direct, not indirect, not through proxy. Silence. Then, that last one is personal. Aviva met his eyes. Exactly. Silence stretched. Gerard picked up the last page again, reread the line about Philomena. His throat moved, but no sound came. Philomena, who had stayed silent until now, finally exploded. So let me get this straight. You're asking to take over our entire recruitment system? Her voice was sharp, too sharp. Her cheeks flushed. She wasn't speaking as a Crom. She was speaking as someone who felt exposed. Aviva didn't flinch. No, I'm asking to fix it before it burns more people than it already has. Gerard leaned forward. This isn't how acquisitions work. Aviva tilted her head. That's the problem. Maybe it's time they did, Philomena scoffed. You think you can just walk in and dictate terms, restructure TGR from the inside out? Aviva smiled softly. No, I think your numbers already did that. I'm just the one who put it in writing. Philomena leaned back, arms crossed. You think this system is broken? Aviva didn't answer right away. She stood up, walked to the window, looked out, not at the skyline, but past it. Then she turned. Her smile wasn't smug. It was calm. Inevitable? No. I think it's aging out of relevance, and I'm saving it before the world moves on without it. Gerard blinked. Philomena looked away. The room, for the first time, fell completely silent. Aviva sat back down, straightened her blazer, then added softly, "Sometimes systems don't collapse because of enemies. They collapse because they refuse to evolve." 6 weeks, that's all it took. The first talent cohort recruited through Prism's system, a group of unusual hires, as Philomena had once mockingly called them, had been operating across 3 departments: marketing, analytics, regional expansion. Now, a single document, 14 pages, sat in the middle of the mahogany boardroom table, labeled Performance Metrics, New Cohort versus Traditional Team. Gerard flipped through it first. His eyes slowed by page 3. By page 7, he stopped flipping altogether. He just stared. Philomena glanced over his shoulder. Her lips tightened. Her jaw locked. Productivity increase, 38%. Client retention plus 22%. Campaign success rate nearly double. Internal promotion readiness 3x faster than previous hires. No Ivy League degrees, no Fortune 100 pedigrees, just thinkers, builders, problem solvers. Aviva didn't say a word. She didn't have to. The numbers had spoken. The quarterly report was released on a Tuesday. Usually, no one cared. Finance updates were just background noise, but this time the subject line hit differently. Q2 earnings report, 34% revenue growth, Prism cohort performance. Inside by 11 a.m., the executive boardroom was full. Graphs lined the screens. Charts climbed higher than projections dared to go. Customer satisfaction, the KPI that had been flatlined for 6 years, suddenly showed a record 91% rating. One executive dropped their pen. Another asked, "Is this real?" It was. The only departments showing dramatic jumps, all staffed with Aviva's hires. Gerard cleared his throat. For the first time, he wasn't skeptical. He was curious. "Okay," he said slowly. "What would it take to scale this across the whole company?" Everyone turned to Aviva. She didn't blink. "Start by firing the assumptions." Silence fell over the room. The charts had spoken. The clients had spoken. The results were undeniable. And then, from the far end of the table, a voice calm but pointed, "Ms. Oswald, if this model works so well, why weren't we hiring people like this before?" The room didn't breathe. Philomena shifted in her seat. She could have said it was process. She could have said legacy systems. She could have said anything else. But deep down, she knew the truth. She hadn't seen them because she wasn't looking for them. They weren't polished. They weren't branded. They didn't fit the frame she'd built for talent. And now they were outperforming everyone she'd once bet on. "I thought they lacked polish," she admitted softly. "I was wrong." Across the table, Aviva didn't gloat. She just looked at her, like someone who'd been waiting years to hear that sentence, not for herself, but for everyone like her. 1 year later, the emails this time didn't come with panic. They came with congratulations. Subject: TGR hits 94% client satisfaction all-time high. Subject: Prism-inspired teams lead 70% of new business wins. What started as a risky experiment was now the backbone of TGR's reputation. Aviva stood near the glass window of her new office. Same building, but a different wing now. She watched a new training session downstairs, diverse hires, second chancers, late bloomers being onboarded without judgment. Philomena had left the division 3 months ago. In her exit memo, she wrote only one sentence: "We don't get to rewrite the past, but we can stop copying its mistakes." And maybe that was enough. The industry took notice. 3 other firms reached out to Prism for consultations. And TGR, for the first time in a decade, they didn't just meet expectations, they led the conversation. Because now, when people spoke about talent, they meant it. A soft knock. Aviva didn't look up right away. She was reviewing Prism's next expansion plan, 3 new markets, 2 continents. Then the voice. "May I come in?" It was Philomena. No HR badge, no clipboard, no armor. She stood there like someone who'd finally stopped pretending she had all the answers. Aviva gestured toward the seat. No hostility, no warmth either. Just space. There was silence. Then Philomena spoke, voice quiet. "You were right. Not just about the system, about me." She looked down. "I thought I was being rigorous. I was being rigid." A beat. "You didn't just change how we hire. You made me realize how many people I'd locked out because I couldn't imagine them being better than me." That one hit deep. Aviva didn't respond with words. She reached over, opened a drawer, and slid across the table a report. TGR Talent Equity Program Proposal Phase 2. Right there under Advisory Board was one name, Philomena Oswald. Philomena blinked. "Why me?" Aviva's voice was calm. "Because if you can change, anyone can." They sat in the quiet meeting room, no PowerPoint, no pitch deck, no pressure. Just 2 women, one once ignored, one finally listening. Philomena exhaled, looking straight ahead. "I used to think I was doing the company a favor, being strict, objective, protecting our culture." A pause. "But I wasn't objective. I was obedient to an outdated idea of what success looks like." She leaned back, her voice low as if confessing to history. "I've turned away people who had brilliance in their eyes because their resumes didn't look like the ones I was taught to trust." She clenched her hands. "I rejected hundreds, maybe more, just because they didn't fit the mold." Across from her, Aviva simply nodded. No triumph, no lecture, just acknowledgement. Because true change doesn't come from proving someone wrong. It comes when that person realizes it themselves. Philomena's voice was softer now, less like a confession, more like curiosity. "Aviva," she said, "was this always your goal?" Aviva looked up. "What goal? To change hiring? Or was it to change how we see talent altogether?" Aviva leaned forward, calm, measured, but certain. "Hiring was just the surface. I wanted to change the lens, not just the list of candidates." She folded her hands. "Talent doesn't need a permission slip from Prestige, or a stamp of approval from a brand name. It just needs a place to show itself, and a system that doesn't punish it for being unconventional." Philomena nodded slowly. "I think I finally understand." Aviva stood up. The late afternoon sun spilled through the window, casting a warm line across the table between them. She walked slowly toward the door, then paused. No anger, just clarity. She turned back, her voice steady. "I don't want to be your boss, Philomena." A pause. That was never the point. She placed a folded document on the table, a list of hiring reform protocols. Then she looked straight into Philomena's eyes. "What I want is to make sure no one like you ever gets the chance again to make someone like me feel small." Silence. But this time it didn't hurt. It healed. 2 years passed, quietly at first, then unmistakably. Consulting firms rewrote their playbooks. Boardrooms referenced the PRISM protocol in quarterly strategy meetings. Job fairs began showcasing diverse stories, not just elite pedigrees. It started with PRISM, a model that was once considered too risky, too emotional, or too unconventional, now copied, cited, and celebrated. Aviva wasn't at every meeting anymore. She didn't need to be, because the real change, it wasn't in one hire or one company. It was in the lens the entire industry now used to define talent. The spotlight hit her. thousands of eyes fixed, the air thick with anticipation. Aviva stepped forward, her voice calm, her gaze steady. We were never broken. The system was, and we fixed it. A pause. The crowd erupted, cheering, applause, tears in eyes. She continued, "This isn't just Prism's story. It's ours. Every person ever told they didn't fit. Every voice ever silenced." Her words echoed, not just across the hall, but across an industry and beyond. Never let outdated biases or rigid molds define your true worth or the worth of anyone else. Success isn't about luck or waiting for permission. It's about resilience, courage, and delivering real value despite doubt and obstacles. Always believe in yourself, embrace your uniqueness, and fight to change unfair systems so that no one is held back just because they don't fit the old mold. If this story inspired you, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss our raw, powerful, and deeply moving stories about people who stand up against injustice and change the world. Don't forget to like and share to spread the power of perseverance and fairness with everyone you know. With Athena Stories, we don't just share stories, we inspire change.